Welcome back to PR After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, bringing you your weekly cocktail of PR and marketing tips that will help you and your business. Stick around, we'll get started right after these messages. Hello, listeners. It's me, Alex, from PR After Hours. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about the way I get this show right into your earbuds every week. It's because I use Anchor FM. Now, I've told you previously that I've been podcasting since 2006, back when we used stone knives and bear skins and a couple of Dixie cups and string. Anchor FM has really streamlined this and made it simpler for people who don't know the first thing about setting up a podcast or don't have, time to learn all the pro tools and stuff, because it's all right here. First thing it's important to know is it's free. There are certain tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That's huge. Distribution is a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you, so it's really great Anchor FM can do that for you, and you're not paying hosting fees. That adds up every month. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place, so download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started, and be sure to join me in the virtual cocktail lounge on PR After Hours.
This is Holly Jackson, host of Inspiration Contagion podcast. You're in the virtual lounge with Alex Greenwood of PR After Hours.
Friends, if you're an aspiring writer, and if you're listening to Mysterious Goings On, you may just be an aspiring writer. You want to learn a little bit more about the world of publishing? I want to welcome you to the Oasis. It's a live virtual writers workshop on Saturday, May 1st, 2021, tailored to the needs of the aspiring writer. This 4-hour Zoom workshop features 4 speakers with a century of combined experience in the writing and publishing realm. In fact, here's who we got on the ballot. It's Leanna Brunner talking about where do I start my publishing journey. Then you got me, Alex Greenwood, doing red alerts for writers. Then you go into self-editing with Tiffany White and book formatting with Les Lynham. This is everything you need if you're going to start the self-publishing independent writing journey all in one spot. And best of all, you can join us from the comfort of your own home. So register today, then pour yourself a cup of coffee on May 1st and get ready to delve into an exciting experience that will inspire, inform, and invigorate you as your publishing journey begins. Cost is only $25. We accept all major credit cards. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to Write Central. That's write-central.com/events, and you can find the Oasis there. I hope to see you at the Oasis. What is it that we don't know about leadership? Well, I could probably fill an entire Encyclopedia Britannica of things I don't know about leadership, but I want to find out what our guest thinks about what is missing from leadership or what people don't know about leadership, among other things we're going to talk about. That's why I'm so excited to welcome Jesus Eddie Campa. He's come to the show, and he was born in El Paso, Texas. He's retired from public service after 27 years and transitioned his experience and expertise to the private sector. He served as a chief deputy, a chief of police, and state director. He's created and implemented the innovative No Colors, No Labels initiative designed to remove the preconceived notion that the police were racially motivated. And he was named the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian of the Year in 2017. He holds a master's degree in criminal justice and security administration and is currently working, as if he's not busy enough, he's working on a PhD in public service leadership. He is the owner of Leading Through Adversity, and I am looking forward to learning a lot from Eddie Campa. Eddie, welcome to the Virtual Lounge.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. That's always nice to hear your bio. And sometimes you're like, God, I've done all that.
Yeah, and there wasn't anything bad or anything you're embarrassed about. I mean, when they do mine, I'm like, oh God, did I do that?
Well, no. I mean, you got the public bio. If you go into the Google thing, you'll find a whole lot of things about me that, especially when you're serving as a chief of police, people just like to run you through the mud.
Eddie, where were you the chief?
So I started off my career in El Paso, Texas as the chief. Well, I started my career in law enforcement. rose to the ranks of chief deputy right under the sheriff in El Paso County with the sheriff's office. Then after that, I retired, became the chief of police for the Ector County Independent School District. And then after that, I became the chief of police for the city of Marshall, Texas, which is down East Texas by Louisiana. And after there, I went on and became the state director for the Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training for the state of Oklahoma, which is basically the regulatory agency for the state of Oklahoma, regulating all police officers' training and education.
That's the CLEAT certification, is that right?
Yes, CLEAT. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Where did you live in Oklahoma? You know, I'm from Oklahoma.
Oh, are you? Awesome. Yeah. I was living in Ada, but spent the majority of my time in the city. My position was more of a legislative politician type of thing.
Sure.
I carried a badge and a gun, but I was more on the legislative side.
Right.
What part of Oklahoma did you live?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I lived mostly Oklahoma City, but I also was a reporter in Tulsa for a while, and then I was in Chickasha. I ran a newspaper in El Reno. I've been all over Oklahoma, man.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I'm in Kansas City now.
Okay. So, yeah, you were asking about East Central. As a matter of fact, while I was there, I was doing some adjunct professoring there. So that was awesome.
Oh, cool. And folks, if you hear any noise, I caught Eddie. He's on a job site. He's really busy, but I'm lucky to have him here. And he's in a really cool mobile studio, also known as his vehicle. So, you know what? We can hear you just fine. But in case people hear something extra, it's funny, Eddie. I was listening to another show, not mine, and they had a former mayor talking, and he had an infant daughter playing. And you know what? I think nowadays people just roll with it, don't they?
You know what? I mean, that's the point, man. That's what I'm talking about. For 27 years of my life, when actually longer than that, because I've been a leader for quite a while, and life is just too short to be taken so serious, man. And I'm trying to learn that, and that's one of the things that you started off your podcast with. What is the things that people don't know about leadership is that, hey, you know what? Leadership is a real serious thing to do. Of course, it's very serious, and you've always got to be serious. But you also got to have some fun with it. You just got to.
Yeah, but I guess the thing is, and as I said, I was a former small town newspaper editor, so I knew the chief pretty well, and he was, I think, wise enough to take me under his wing and be as transparent with me as possible. And and when he did that, I realized, oh my gosh, the guy behind the badge is actually a dude. He's a cool guy, and you're right, and he had a sense of humor. It was really dry, but he had a sense of humor, and that helped me get along with him.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, in law enforcement, we usually have an adverse position with the media. And I'm totally the opposite. I had a great working relationship with the media in El Paso, in Marshall. And honestly, what I seem to have a real big problem with is with fly by night. All of a sudden, everybody's a journalist now. Everybody has a camera, everybody has a keyboard, and you got all these blogs. And when I said that, if you actually Google me, you'd run my name through the mud, is that, you've got people that it'll just say whatever they want to say about you on their little blog or whatever. And because it's on Google, it's got to be true,
Yeah.
Google provides nothing but facts.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing and that's something it's a huge pet project of mine, though, is to educate people about how to discern, what they find online, teaching people what reporters ostensibly are supposed to do, which is we're supposed to get 3 corroborated sources for things we report. We're not supposed to just go off course, And I know you're nodding your head. I know you probably appreciate that as a former chief, that, wow, you got a reporter who's actually going to do his homework, right? I mean, because not all of them do.
Well, I do. My last stint there in Oklahoma, I had a reporter who, he had somebody had contacted him about some issues that I apparently had back in Marshall, and gave him their side. So he was nice enough to call me and say, hey, give us your side of the story. And then I gave him my side of the story. But then when he wrote the story, he took the side of the other people but what I found funny was, it's funny how Jesus Campa sees himself totally different from what everybody that I talked to sees him like. And he talked to one person and just basically said, I mean, it was basically, you could tell it was a 100% hit piece, because everything that I told him, and I pointed him to facts, and I showed him documents, and I basically gave him the Holy Grail, because I'm an open book. got nothing to hide.
Right.
So I gave him the Holy Grail. He's like, wow. And he even said, oh, that's not what they told me. It's not. But then again, he just totally bypassed the proof and just hit me like, I was just like, wow. That was one of the first, because he comes from a real newspaper, or an online newspaper, but it's been around forever. And I figured he was going to be, the true journalist, and he had turned out to be more like a blog, I guess. So I was, whatever.
Well, I want to get into the leadership aspect, but it's rare that I get to speak with a distinguished former officer. If you don't mind me asking, do you? There is obviously, though, a gulf between the public and the police in a lot of ways. I'm not saying every person in the public, and I'm not saying every police officer, but have things ever been quite as fraught as they seem to be now, in your opinion, or is this a new day, or what do you think about that?
Well, you know what I'm going to say to that? I'm going to say that, yeah, things seem to be really hard nowadays. But I think it's just because it's a lot easier to bring things to the limelight nowadays. You know what I mean? I think we've always had these problems. For instance, let's just say, I'm in El Paso right now. You have a shooting in El Paso. You have a shooting in Chicago, that may be racially motivated or whatever. 30 years ago, we would hear about it if we were lucky, maybe tomorrow morning on the news, maybe.
Right.
Now, if it happens, I will probably know about it before the first police car gets to that shooting, or second police car. Because of the fact of how information is just goes about everywhere. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm also a realist, and I can sit here and tell you that the fact is that law enforcement in itself needs to change. I mean, law enforcement, we've kind of eluded or refused to adapt to the times. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think we do need to make some changes, but I think who's to blame? I think the system as a whole is just systematically broken. So I think that's where we're finding ourselves now as to what the problem is.
Did you, as a chief and in general in your career, did you see changes that needed to be made in how the police, the public information officer, interacted with the media and the public? Were those some things that were primary on your mind at any time?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I think a public information officer you have to make sure you have a good public information officer. When I went to the city that I went to, where I was the chief of police in East Texas, I was brought in there to kind of change the culture. I always joke about the fact that, they had some issues with racial issues. Well, they've always had racial issues in that area. And I was brought in to change the culture, and they weren't going to hire another white police chief. They weren't never going to hire an African-American. So they settled for this little caramel Mexican guy. And that's where I came in. And so we started changing the culture, but they were kind of behind. I mean, they were really behind the 8 ball in that department. When I brought up the issue of hiring a public information officer, I got a lot of grief because they didn't see the value in it. You know what I mean? But once I got the position approved and we were able to fund it, and I brought in a very qualified PIO. I'll tell you what, I made a mistake with the first one that I hired. And then I hired the second one, and she was golden. I mean, we had a relationship with the media like no other. And I really do think that law enforcement in general needs to learn how to work with the media, because the media can be your best friend. And I don't mean that by covering anything like that or anything. But if you're transparent, and that's just the same thing that the community asks for. If you're just transparent and you provide the information by telling the truth, you're going to be okay. So they should never fear the media.
Yeah, and I think that leads right into the leadership questions there, Eddie. So tell me, what is it we're missing? What is the difference? I guess the question would be, is there a difference between the public and private sector when it comes to leadership? You've already illustrated some things you did, but is there something that you would point to?
Oh, absolutely. There's major differences between private and public sector. I mean, for instance, and here's what I'm saying about leadership, the things they don't teach you about in school. They don't teach you the fact that leadership it's lonely at the top. When you're surrounded by people, you don't know whether those people are surrounded with you because of what you can do for them or what they think you can do for them. But that's what they're there for. You don't know who your friends are. You lose friends. You gain new ones, but you don't know what their motives are. When you're in the public sector, people always line up with you because of the things that you can do or provide them. The politics that comes with leadership is ridiculous. I mean, every as a police chief, I had to make sure that every 4 years or every 2 years, depending on where I was, that my city manager and my mayor were going to be reelected, because if they weren't reelected, then I wouldn't have a job, because the new mayor would come in and bring somebody else in. Nobody prepares you for all of that. You know what I mean? and you're kind of up there sometimes. And then, when you take on these leadership roles, a lot of people take them on thinking, oh yeah, it's nothing but glory and hype and it's great. And your adversity's never really been tested. So that's what I'm saying about people are lacking in leadership. And then the other thing that's really lacking is that people have really gotten away from the definition of the word leadership. When you look it up in the dictionary, it's got a defined leadership definition. It's a person that can influence, a person who holds these traits. What leadership is looked at now is it's actually kind of like that old saying, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And leadership is kind of in the eye of the beholder now, because you have a lot of people, and not to get into politics, but depending on what side of the fence you're on, you're going to agree or disagree. But you have this group of people who thought Donald Trump was the world's greatest leader. Then you have this other group of people who think he was the worst leader. I mean, that's up to you to decide, depending on which form of glasses you're looking at it. But the true meaning of leadership has actually just been watered down to where leadership is now based on a perspective of the person that's being led. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Do you believe that leaders should actively seek consensus, or do you go the other direction where consensus is nice, but I have a direction to go here? This is not a democracy. I'm the chief. You see what I'm saying?
Well, right. No, I totally get you. And no, absolutely not. I mean, this is going to sound very hypocritical of me, okay? But as a chief, you have to, as a leader, regardless of what you're leading, you have to know the balance. You have to know the balance. You have to have your team on your side, right? So you have to have a genuine consensus. But the leader's job is not to be your friend. It's not the leader's job to be your friend, to babysit you, to get along with everybody. And that's what a lot of leaders do nowadays. They lead based on emotion, and they lead based on whether or not they're going to be popular with the decision they're going to make. One of the hardest things that I have ever had to do is lead the way I lead, and the way real leaders lead. And I guess that's going to sound a little narcissistic, because I do consider myself an actual leader. Is that you have to lead and make the tough decisions because it's the right decision, not because it's going to make you popular or because it's going to move your career along the lines. I'm going to be very honest with you. Being a leader and having to make some of the decisions that I have made throughout my career have actually hurt my career, but it was because it was the right thing to do. You know what I'm saying? It was the right thing to do for the ultimate sacrifice of the vision and the mission. Now, there's an old saying that says, mission first, and I do agree with it. When you're put in charge of being a leader, you have a mission and a vision to accomplish, and that should be catered at all costs, but not necessarily at all means. So it's nice to have a consensus. And what I like to do is I do like to lead in a kind of coaching, mentoring way. As I bring everybody, I get their input, but at the end of the day, I'm the guy who's going to be making the decision, whether it's popular or unpopular, because I'm the guy who's putting his neck on the chopping block, and I have to make the right decision.
Yeah, I understand. In my career, I have managed people, and then I had consulting authority over hundreds. And, it was a hard lesson to learn early on in my career that, not everybody's going to like you. And if you go into the office every day thinking, I want everybody to like me, well, you're not going to lead anywhere. Excuse me. By that same token, I always tried to build as much consensus as possible, but I like what you said there. It's like, yes, consensus is important. You've got to get your team, you're the quarterback, you got to get the team on board with the plays, right? But they've got to, at the end of the day, they've got to understand, though, she or he is the quarterback, and we signed up to be on this team, so let's get going. I like that. Let me just take this, Eddie, if I could. Let's take this to what you're doing now. What are you doing now that you're out of public service? You're still serving, though, aren't you?
Yeah, so I own a security consulting firm. It's called America's Best Strategic Security Group. And what we do is we're a security consulting firm. I've actually been in business for about 20 years. However, I've only been incorporated as a corporation for the last 3.5 years. So we're still doing security, and we also provide security guards. We do consulting service. We do video camera monitoring, alarm installations, and things like that. Messaging service, private protection. So we do all of that. So it's kind of still like being in the police world, but just at a private level. So actually, right now, we're out at a job site where we're installing some new cameras and some alarm system on a major grocery store that's opening up here in town, and we also have their security contract, and so that's what we're doing now. And then I have another business called leadingthrough-adversity.com, which is a leadership coaching and mentoring development program.
As I said in the introduction, you're not really very busy at all, are you? You're just kind of lounging around the golf course, aren't you?
It's funny because I thought I was busy when I had a full-time job and doing everything else that I was doing. Now I really don't have a full-time job per se, which I do, but I find myself even more busier than ever. And I think the crow is either laughing at me or wanting me to shut up or something.
I love this.
He's just
the crow, man. Hey, so talk to me about for the first day you're not wearing your sidearm, right? I mean, really. No, talk to me about unmasking leadership. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so unmasking leadership just goes back to basically what I talked about is, letting the future leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow and the leaders of today know that, it's okay to fail. It's okay. Everything they don't teach you about in leadership school. So unmasking leadership basically goes in there and tells you the truth. And I have to be a little bit politically correct. It kind of removes the BS. And it's a book it's just very straightforward. It tells you, look, man, if you can't handle stress, if you can't handle being talked about, if you can't handle being lied about, if you can't handle being bit by a snake every once in a while and having to make tough decisions, then this isn't for you, man. So get the hell out, and make room for somebody else. So that's basically what it's all about, kind of in your face. It's not as abrupt as I put it, because I did have to tone down the book quite a bit, because my editor was kind of like, dude, you really want to say this stuff? You might still want a political career down the line. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
So unmasking leadership,
said, hey,
you can, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, hey, man, it may work for Donald Trump. Come on now.
Well, yeah. that's one approach. So this book is on pre-order right now, right, Eddie?
It's on pre-order. I'm hoping it's with the editor. It's with the book company. Where I had originally put in for a July 4th date. I'm just anxious to get the thing out. So yeah. I'm hoping that they can have it, sooner. I know they can have it. I'm hoping they can have it sooner than later, but right now it's on pre-order. Go to my website, jesusedicampa.com, leadingthrough-adversity.com. You can pre-order it for, I think it's like $15. Yeah. When it comes out, price shoots up to $20.
Hey, folks, those links will be in the show notes here. And he's got a really impressive website. Last thing I want to ask you about, and I recommend this for people, even if they're not, and I'm not saying this about you, but I recommend this tactic or tack for people, even if they're not, they think, the best speaker in the world. Everybody who's had a 27, 30-year career like Eddie, you're out on the speaking circuit, you're talking to people, you're shaping minds, you're trying to help people. Do you enjoy the public speaking?
It's funny because everybody makes fun of me because I'm actually I'm an introvert when it comes to a whole lot of things. My idea of fun is being locked up in my room watching some Netflix or reading a good book, right? And right. But once you put a microphone in my hand and a camera in my face, I guess I just don't shut up. Kind of like what the crow was saying right now. I love talking to people. I love being able to share my story, and if it helps them, because you know what, I didn't have that in my career. I never had anybody that. And let me rephrase that. I do have a mentor. He's more of a business mentor that has made me a successful business person. But right. As far as being the actual leader and being out on the circuit and talking to people was, I remember my first speech. The sheriff calls me up and says, "Where are you at?" I said, "Well, I'm over here by the University of Texas at El Paso. Just wrapped up lunch." He goes, "Great. Matter of fact," he goes, "I need you to go to the Abraham Chavez Theater. They're at UTEP. and give my speech on immigration. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, you've heard it a million times. I said, who am I speaking to? And he's all like, it's about 300 or 400 people. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, dude, I can't make it. I'm not feeling good. I told him my chief deputy would go, so go knock yourself out. Oh my God, no stress, right? So that kind of broke me in the hard way. And
well, that sounds great. And so if you go, everybody, go to eddicampa.com. The link will be in the show notes. You can find out, one, how to get his book pre-ordered now. You can also, Eddie, I assume people can find out how they can hire you to speak. Do you do any webinar stuff right now until we get out of COVID? Are you doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we, if you go to leadingthrough-adversity.com, there we have a section for webinars, and we're doing, matter of fact, we did something a couple of days ago for State Farm Insurance. We did a webinar for them on leadership. Myself and one of my partners, so we put on a leadership seminar for them. But yeah, everything. If you go to either one of my websites, you'll find the contact information as how you can go about hiring us. We'll more than gladly do it remotely, or if you want us to fly out there or visit you, we'll be more than happy to do that as well.
You know, Eddie, I want to thank you for taking some time here in the virtual lounge with us. Talking to us particularly about your career, how interesting it is and where you're going next, and the unknown difference between the public and private sector, and just your general thoughts on unmasking leadership. I think we can all revisit the way we conduct ourselves as leaders, and I just appreciate your perspectives. Thank you so much.
No, Austin, it was my pleasure, and I don't think I ever answered your question, but I really do like the private sector a whole lot easier because you don't have to deal with civil service or unions or anything like that. So it's a lot easier to deal with the private sector.
Well, there you go. You just answered the question. See, look at this. See, this is what I'm talking about. See, he was a chief. He knows how to deflect the question. See, he's excellent at it. I don't know, God, Chief.
You just called me a politician, man. Ow, that hurt.
Is there an arrow in your heart right now? I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what? After all these years, it's just scar tissue, so we're good.
Sounds great. Eddie, I've enjoyed meeting you, and again, we appreciate you joining us here in the virtual lounge. Take good care.
Awesome. You do the same. God bless, and everybody be careful out there. Thank you.
Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. Don't forget, you can ask me a question anytime. You can do it through our Twitter account, which is @HoursPR, or even better, you can send me a message vocally. I would love to hear your voice, and I'll answer it on the show. There's a link in the show notes. All you have to do is sign up through Anchor FM. It's free, doesn't take long. And you record your message, I get the message, I will play your audio, just give me your first name and the city you live in, and then I will answer the question to the best of my ability right here on the show. Don't forget to, if you're enjoying this podcast, you can support it and help increase the frequency and value of the show. Just consider being a sponsor for your brand or your agency or just yourself because you're like, I like this show. Or just drop a few coins in the virtual tip jar. Either way, there's links in the show notes. Please check that out. All of that, of course, being in the show notes where you're listening right now or at prafterhours.com. I see that they're turning up the lights. Last call is over, and I've got to clean up this virtual lounge. And until next time, I'm Alex Greenwood, and you've been listening to PR After Hours on Anchor FM. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But have you been there, done that, and got the t-shirt? Now's your chance. If you are a big fan of the virtual lounge right here at PR After Hours, why don't you tell the world and take our spiffy logo and plaster it across your chest for the whole world to see? Well, for the whole world to see on Zoom or whenever you do finally get out of your house. The PR After Hours tee shows that you're an exclusive member of the virtual lounge. It's a cool, comfortable, ring-spun, soft cotton tee. We look for the best possible options we could go for in these t-shirts, and it's in a variety of colors. You can get them in dark heather gray, royal blue, storm, maroon, or good old-fashioned white. These are really comfortable shirts. We offer a premium unisex tee from extra small all the way to 4XL, and a women's slim fit tee, which goes from small to 2XL. They are a hoot. They look cool. And besides, they'll do what we love to do most here at PR After Hours, start a conversation. The PR After Hours t-shirt is available now on Bonfire. The link is in the show notes, and I hope you'll look into getting one. I not only think they look cool and be great conversation starters, but they'll help us keep the virtual lounge doors open. Thanks so much.